Good. Woo! Party room. This is great. Yeah, it's been a great conference, and I think we're in for a really great session. So thanks everyone for coming. Okay, I forgot my name. That's great. I'm so tired. Is everyone else tired like me? Yeah, okay. So I just want to thank you for joining us. Innovation in Indigenous housing isn't about doing more of the same. It's about reimagining systems through Indigenous leadership, knowledge, and creativity. My name is Lisa Smith. I'm with the National Indigenous Homelessness Council, the NIHC. You've probably seen our booth outside. And I'm very honored to be your moderator today. As I've already said, we have three incredible panelists who are putting these ideas into practice in different ways, from transitional housing for women and families escaping violence, to eviction prevention and wraparound supports, to partnership models bridging municipal systems and Indigenous governance. So I would like to start today's session in a good way. And so I would like to acknowledge that this conference is taking place on unceded Indigenous lands. And it's a good time to tell everyone I'm from Newfoundland and Labrador, so there's no translation for me, but there is simultaneous translation in English and French. So, and we are on the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation, and it's recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Okay, having said all that, I will, apologies, okay, it's good? Yeah? Okay. Oh, this is nice. I could do this all day, look. What's a complicated word I could say right now? Okay, that's too much fun. I'm very tired. Okay. And so without further ado, I want to invite Mary Ellen Simon, Housing Programs Director of Niagara Regional Native Center, to the stage.
Miigwech. The Kanien'kehá:ka are the people of these lands, waters. They carry stories of deep meaning and practice ceremonies of connection to the place you know today as Montreal. Jojage is unceded land. Just gonna learn how to use my, I chose this picture of the Kanien'kehá:ka, resistance. Some will know as the Oka Crisis of 1990, as a life-defining moment. It was an identity-building moment for me as I came to understand and ask questions about who are Six Nations and why am I First Nations? What are Indigenous rights and why is this violent? This is a community saying no to land extraction, dispossession, and racism. This is a no to disrespectfully bulldozing over ancestors and cutting down pines. Pines being symbolic of the Great Law of Peace. This was a call for the recognition of Indigenous rights. It still echoes. Their resistance on this day continues to shape conversations about land, governance, and justice in the settler colonial state of Canada. It has influenced new generations of land defenders and social movements. It reminds us that reconciliation is not symbolic, it is about truth, relationship, and systemic change. As we gather to talk about Indigenous innovations, housing, and community, let us celebrate the spirit of that resistance, recognizing that the work we do must always honor Indigenous sovereignty and the right of all people to live safely and with dignity on their own lands. I'm glad that stayed up for so long. I was a little worried about the image that we're here at the Alliance. It's highly political. So, Ani Boju, Mary Ellen Indigenous Anishinaabe Kwe, Shishiguaning, Indunjanaba, Shikan Dotem, Niagara and Da. So hello, my name is Mary Ellen. I'm Anishinaabe Odawa with Odawa roots. So it's nice to be in a French-speaking community as well. My family is from Manitoulin Island. This is an image of my mom and an image that I was looking to bead, only partway through. My story of homelessness starts with my mother, and as a young child, she was fleeing violence. She was looking for safe, secure housing, and she was being pursued by Family and Children's Services. So from the movement, forced movement off our home community, our home reservation on Manitoulin Island, to a non-Indigenous community on the island, to a off-the-island community of Sudbury, and then down to the Niagara is my migration route. I grew up in the Niagara region. I went to school there. I graduated and have raised children, and now have a grandchild. So it's very exciting. My mother is no longer with me. Unfortunately, a lot of my aunties have passed. I grew up without grandparents, and I grew up 9 hours away from my home community. So I know how some people might feel about that idea of being displaced and finding a home away from home. And Niagara has become a home. I have a home on Manitoulin. I have a home in Niagara. I have close connections to Hamilton. I went to school there, worked there, had a baby there, and have returned to the Niagara region. Does everybody know where Niagara is? Niagara Falls. I'll shout out. So, unfortunately, moving to Niagara was not a move to safety. It was a move to a place where I didn't see faces like mine. I didn't grow up in communities. We're urban. I was very disconnected from culture, even though my mom was a first language speaker, and still somehow I struggle. So again, this is my presentation for today. It is relationship-based innovation. I'm going to tell you a story about how being in relationship with community can grow into new things we didn't see coming. Relationships of caring, moving, and calling out to moving to a calling in. I hope that you all enjoyed the presentation yesterday morning. It was very powerful, and calling in will continue to resonate with me and kind of frames my presentation today about working with mainstream organizations, with regional governance, and mainstream education systems. Relationships of caring, moving, the calling out to calling in types of partnerships, and with commitment and persistence have created new systems of care, which I will highlight today of how we got there. So I'd like to move on to where I work. So I work for the Niagara Regional Native Center. It is a friendship center. Is there any other friendship center people here? Yay! So this is a picture on the left that hangs in the walls of our building. And these are the OG aunties and uncles and grandmas and grandpas that had the vision of creating this friendship center. It is what our community talks about all the time. It talks about how important this connection and relationship to an organization is. We have just celebrated 50 years of being in service. On the bottom two pictures is my oldest and his partner and my grandbaby. And this is taken at a Christmas event that we have every year. We do a fundraiser coming up next month. We're celebrating Halloween tonight. My coworker here, Destiny, who works for Abbey House, which is illustrated here. It's a transitional house for Indigenous women with or without children. It has been around for 15 years. I am very thankful for the work Destiny does for community. We're constantly rotating people in and out of Abbey House. It is the first Indigenous transitional housing in Niagara, in the Niagara region, and I'm very proud of that for our community. So I hope that we can continue to honor our ancestors and build really great things. I guess I don't have to talk about what the Friendship Center is. It continues to remain places of belonging, advocacy, and self-determination for off-reserve Indigenous people. I think Niagara is a very special place. It is the home of the Treaty of Niagara, the home of where people congregated from all places, whether it was Cree people or Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee people. It has been a place to learn more about, and it has been a place that has been cleared and dispossessed of Indigenous people. Our history was there for so long, and now I go home, however many years ago, and can't see faces like mine. So the Friendship Center is a safe place where we can do that, and we continue to work towards that. So this is just a picture of me on a special place on my reserve with my baby, who's now 14. And it's about revitalizing Indigenous knowledge. So the Friendship Center was the first place that I could go with my children. I went there one time as a child and never returned back, right? Caught the bus, went to a movie night, it was closing program. Now I know the youth worker there who has youth programs and brings youth in, and it's such a powerful connection. But I didn't have that as a young person. I had to search for it, so I searched for it in mainstream institutions. I went to McMaster University. I took Indigenous Studies. That was after I connected with the Friendship Center, took my children to program, and encouraged their connection and cultural revitalization. So they would see faces like theirs. So they would hear stories that resonated with them. And I brought them home as often as I could. My brother was there, and he had a baby with my sister-in-law. And that's what kept bringing me home, is family. And I keep coming back to Niagara. So I'd like to move on to some of the things that we do at the Niagara Regional Native Center and to talk about that relationship change here. So we run a Reaching Homes program. Does anybody else involved with Reaching Homes? Is there mainstream community entities in the room? And is there an Indigenous streaming? Wow. Thank you. So this will be a story that maybe you can see how, through relationship building, we've navigated to a core group that is looking to understand how to coordinate access for housing across Niagara. So does everybody understand the language of ICAB? The Indigenous Community Advisory Board for Reaching Homes, so it's for the Indigenous stream, and it's supposed to talk to the community entity. So they reach out to us. We have our own advisory board. We talk about housing, what our needs are, et cetera, et cetera. If the community entities through the municipality is reaching the needs of ending homelessness for Indigenous people. In our community, we have committed to reducing Indigenous homelessness to a representative portion of our population in Niagara. So that is their commitment, and that is their relationship with us. So ICAB, in our community, we call it NICAB for Niagara Indigenous Community Advisory Board. Does anybody else have a community advisory board running? So next, I will talk about how we have moved from NICAB, which met It was running before, so this is 4 years ago that I started back with the Niagara Regional Native Center. It was running previous to that, but we had COVID, we've had some changes in job roles. So when I came in, I was picking NICAB back up. And I picked it up from where it had started, which was relationship connection with the region, with a specific person who has been very supportive and helpful. And together we were able to move towards that initiative of of the representative population as a goal. Next, IHAC, NICAB became IHAC. So IHAC is a little branch. When we sat together, we said, we need to do some research. And that's right up my alley. I'm excited about doing Indigenous community-driven research. So IHAC said we need to talk about policy briefs. So we did. We partnered with Brock University. On the next slide, I will talk about who those partners are. But here is just a visual for you to see kind of our little engagement with community that we were hoping to do. So together, we decided that we would bring Indigenous knowledge into Brock University. Sorry, just looking for my moderator here. Okay. We would bring Indigenous research, Indigenous knowledge into the classroom. And the classroom would, in return, help us create housing policies to bring forward. It was a very relationship-building moment for Brock University. Joanne Harritz and Liam are our connections there and continue to work with us. This is just the first step of what we chose to do together and how we helped students learn how to be in relationship with community. So they're not totally separate in ivory towers thinking up research questions. They're going to community, they're listening. We held the event that you saw there to have them display their research findings to community. There was municipal partners there, so they got to hear it firsthand. And we had a beautiful lunch together that was traditional foods, served by our community center, and I just want to shout out again to friendship centers because they do so much work. I know I said Halloween, Christmas. I don't know what events you do, but our friendship center is amazing at putting on events and bringing community together. And that was a great example of them doing something different, bringing knowledge to community. So IHAC then decided from there that they were going to continue developing a community-driven research project that asked, what is home? What is home? Can we define as Indigenous people, by Indigenous people, what home is? So we developed a project that is Indigenous Visions of Making Home. And we're still on the end parts of that. So next, IHAC. I'm going to move on here. So here is I don't know if you want to skew that, but I believe it breaks down our whole research project. If it doesn't, you're welcome to contact me, and I'm sorry for everybody who's watching, but you can connect to our Friendship Center for the final copy. So this was about reclaiming research, and it was to inform Indigenous-led housing. So Dr. Joanne Harritz, she's a public policy scholar supporting Indigenous participation in local housing governance. Liam Midzane-Gobbin researches on Indigenous sovereignty and governance. So through community-driven research, we're not just subjects of study, we are co-authors. We are researchers. There was a learning process for Brock researchers to understand that we were more than just engaging community or being plate circles of bringing people together. We are researchers. We've always been researchers. I do believe in Native science, and So we will be the co-authors of the policy in the future we want to see. Some of the other things we did, so first that was through talking about university relationship building, research projects that can come of it. Next, in addition to being involved in sitting at tables at the regional level, bringing people together, we heard from our NICAB table that we need to have more voices at the table. It can't just be one voice at the table because there is no support around the table. There's just one person giving you some random Indigenous knowledge that people might not understand. But if we have more people at the table who can define that and support that and explain that and create relationships, then we are we're being heard and listened in a different way. Through that project, I was able to sit in with the Indigenous Prosperity Table in our community. And together we were able to do some community engagement to talk about what is Indigenous prosperity? What are the things that we want to see for services and programs? So this, again, is another kind of engagement tool. It was very handy at the time to have people kind of scan. We went to different events, fun events, Indigenous Sovereignty Day, and engaged community and had them talk about and give their input on what they felt was needed to be prosperous. And the amazing things that came out of there, it's not just about housing, it is about breaking down, it is about relationship building in our community, right? It's about seeing signs with our languages on it and having our educational systems respect our histories, along with safe, affordable housing was very high on our research. Other things that we've done here is housing fair. We just recently had this in April, and it kind of illustrated the strong building we've done with mainstream institutions. So we had the YWCA come out. We've had we had Brock University present their findings for Indigenous Visions of Making Home. We've had, I'm just kind of going around picturing who else is there. Community Cares is very strong in our community. We have wonderful relationships that help us house people in real time. Yesterday I was on the phone trying to help a community member not be unhoused. And who do I call? I'm looking for a number. Who has this number for some random landlord? Well, let me call my community partner, Community Cares. I know they know people in the housing field. So I call them, do you have this person's number? I'll call you right back. Do you have this person's number? And did we get it? Yes. Did we solve the problem? Yes. We had Abbey House online. This lady was not going to be unhoused. Not while we're here at this Canadian Alliance. So in the end, I know I have skipped some of my notes. I don't know what time we're at, 5 minutes. So I will leave some time for questions at the end, or? Okay. So in the end, IHAC has become, has been able to advocate. So we have a new transitional housing project that has come forward. Abbey House, with its 15 years, was not able to apply because the RFP said we needed 25 years. So as strong and as long as we've been doing housing in Niagara, we were not able to apply to be the operators of this transitional housing project. So we worked with our NICAB table, our IHAC table, which kind of cross over now. And we advocated to the regional level. We had mainstream partners stand beside us and say, yes, we support that this should be an Indigenous project. And it should have Indigenous voices and be led by Indigenous people. So through that, we are building capacity through partnership and creative collaboration. Just going to skip here. I should tell you who those partners are. My apologies. So we have the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center, the Niagara chapter of Native Women, who are part of this coordinated access approach. We sit around a table weekly. We talk about who might be a fit for this project and what we're ready for, right? We're opening the doors, and we need to respect the community that it's opening in and what their abilities are at this time. So this is at the early stages of Indigenous coordinated access. It's designed by community, and it's designed for community. So I'd like to end with closing reflections. Relationship is the foundation of innovation. Innovation is relationships plus reciprocity and reclamation. Indigenous governance and research are reshaping local systems. Friendship centers remain the heart of Indigenous housing transformation. And you can debate that with me if you like. If you're serious about innovation, start with relationships and be ready to listen. Share power and build something new together. So, is anybody familiar with this? This is the dish with one spoon wampum. It's important. I'll end with it. I started with something different, but this is important to us as Anishinaabe people. It talks about a relationship between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. The circle represents a bowl, and philosophically, that bowl is all of those nations, the plants, the animals, the air, the trees, and it reminds me of the Thanksgiving address. But all of those things that we talk about, all of the things that our creation stories talk about that are important to us, all those relationships that are relayed to us in those creation stories are the bowl. There's a spoon, so there's no sharp edges. And we take from it what we need and we leave things for others. And I like to include and say, like, that includes those nations that are non-human. So I'd like to end with that. Thank you very much.
Wow, I could listen to you speak all day, so we only have limited time. And I just want to echo how I view friendship centers. You know, I'm on the board of First Light, the Friendship Center in St. John's, and my colleague often calls them international spaces, like mini UNs, where there's so many nations, communities, governments housed in one great spot. And so, yeah, thank you for that. And next, we're going to hear from Miranda Rapazzo, Executive Director of Sagajawe, and I have to dance when I say that, nonprofit housing. And we're also going to hear from Graham Cubbett from Flourish Affordable Housing Company? No? Oh, community, sorry. It just says COM ... on my notes here. So without further ado, Miranda, do you want to take the stage? And I should mention at this point, too, that we'll leave some time at the end for questions.
I should pick this up, or I'm not going to be able to turn. So I'm really, really, really nervous, if you can hear it in my voice. So Scano, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Miranda Rapazzo. I am the Executive Director for Sacagawea Nonprofit Housing in Hamilton, Ontario. I am a Mohawk Turtle Clan from the Six Nations territory. So I was going to start with telling you about the organization, but I'm going to start with telling you about my journey and how I got to the organization and why this is not just my profession, but it's my passion. So in 1997, I was a summer student for Sacagawea Nonprofit Housing. So this was my first summer student position. I was like a min, so I was able to learn the organization then. And then in my early 20s, I had a child. So then I was able to become a tenant within Sacagawea. So we lived there for a few years. I was able to get stable on my feet, and then able to rent a market rent apartment. And then moving forward, I want to say about 20 years now. So in about 2019, I was hired as the EA for Sacagawea. In 2022, I moved on to a program management role. And then just recently in 2024, I became the executive director of the organization. So like I said, I have a passion for it. I want to give back to the organization because the organization gave to me and my son when we were just starting out. Okay, so and mice not up here. Perfect. Yes. Okay, so today I invite you to come on a journey with me, a journey that begins with a small grassroots organization, born from passion, community, spirit, and follows its path towards growth, strength, and vision. Along the way, we'll see how partnerships can turn dreams into reality, and how collaboration continues to uplift and empower the urban Indigenous community within the city of Hamilton. So Sacagawea was incorporated in 1987 through the need to supply safe and affordable housing for women and children fleeing domestic violence. We were born out of the Native Women's Center of Hamilton. So our mission is Sacagawea provides safe, affordable, and culturally supportive housing for Indigenous individuals and families. Sacagawea is one of 2 housing providers within the city of Hamilton. We are an Indigenous-led organization with 9 strong Indigenous women who make up our board, and we have 6 full-time staff. So we are a small but mighty team. When the organization opened, we opened with only 2 staff members. So since then, we have tripled in size. Sacagawea offers RGI units at 25% of the tenant's monthly income. We also offer ODSP rates, roughly about $556 for a 1-bedroom and about $825 for a 2-bedroom. We also have deeply affordable units that are possible through the City of Hamilton, through funding from the City of Hamilton. I also want to acknowledge that we do receive funding through the IH7 program from Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services that allows us to give some of our units subsidized rents. So at Sacagawea, we currently operate 64 housing units across 23 properties. In the early 90s, we purchased 29 single-family homes in 3 phases. In 2014, we purchased and refurbished a sixplex home, a building, and this was to make it safe and affordable homes for women and children who were specifically fleeing violence. So they were able to have a safe home with just women within this residence. So that consists of 3 1-bedrooms and 3 2-bedroom units. Then in 2016, we sold off 11 of our single-family homes. During that time, though, we ensured that no family was displaced, and all those families had adequate housing after we sold those units. In 2019, we completed our largest to-date building, which is a 3-story, 23 units of mixed 1- and 2-bedroom homes with 3 accessible units. And then jumping to our newest project, in 2024, Nadawana, which is where we live in Ojibwe, we have 17 mixed units of 1- and 2-bedrooms. It is a repurposed factory which was built in the early 1900s, so the architect in this building is really beautiful. This is, again, how we show the innovation of when you bring cultural design into a space, the way it makes it feel homey and more, I guess, more loving. And yeah, just want to note that Sacagawea services over 130 individuals and families. Our occupancy rate is 99%, at 99%. We have one unit that is unoccupied, and that's only because we're completing a full renovation on that unit. Our turnover rate is about 3%. The programs that we delivered last year were 22 cultural and wellness programs. And 96% of the tenants who attend the programs report that they're feeling more well-connected to the culture. As we were expanding, we've seen the need grow for Indigenous supportive housing within Hamilton. We have collaborated with our allies from Flourish to start this impactful venture of culturally relevant supportive housing. September of this year, we broke ground on our 24-unit, on our 204 Gage Street project. This project will offer 40 bachelor units to Indigenous individuals living in encampments or leaving correction facilities or hospitals. So our vision for this project is to ensure cultural safety. Every aspect of this project reflects Indigenous traditions and values, holistic support. So housing combined with wraparound services for mental health and addiction recovery, employment training and cultural program, as well as community connection through spaces designed for gathering, ceremony, and cultural learning. So this project was funded through the three tiers of the government in the amount of $22.2 million, which is a huge, huge success for, again, our small organization. So so the project is fully funded. Sacagawea holds no mortgage on this property. And then 2025, we purchased another piece of property. So this property will be a 15-unit, 31-bed beds for Indigenous learners. So, Indigenous students, Indigenous families coming from rural places, or even just within the city of Hamilton that find themselves sleeping in cars and not having a place to live while they're continuing their studies. So we're really proud about that project as well. That project will also include a amenity and cultural space for programming and tutoring and studies. So this is just a little bit of our application process. So Sacagawea doesn't go on we don't go by a wait list. So our applicants aren't numbers, they're priorities. So we have a priority list, which is not, we maintain our own list like in-house. So we don't pull off the city's by name list. These are all like, we do networking with other organizations, and our applicants come from just the outreach from the other organizations as well. Sacagawea has one case manager, one tenant support worker who offer the cultural programming and one-on-one supports, food security, housing setups, and navigation assistance to the various Indigenous organizations within the city of Hamilton. Like I said, we are a small but mighty team. We've come a long way. This is our newest building with our beautiful amenity space. And again, we're for Indigenous by Indigenous. I guess that's it. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Miranda. My name's Graham Cubitt, and I'm the president of Flourish. We're a nonprofit real estate development services company working exclusively with fellow charities, nonprofits, and municipalities. And it's a real honor for me as a non-Indigenous person to be working in collaboration with Miranda and her team, Lisa, and others who are part of the Sacagawea team, and the board that Miranda mentioned, who are truly visionaries and committed to the idea of innovation, not innovation for the sense of novelty, but saying what do we know is wrong and what do we know needs to be changed and how do we lean into that. And it's a real honor and privilege for me to be a part of that, the Sacagawea community, and thank you. My personal experience goes back about 20 years, 25 years almost, in working in mental health and addiction support. I worked for a brief period of time in a high secure psychiatric hospital in the UK, and realized, like, yes, mental health treatment is very important in that setting, but if there's nowhere to go in the community, the recovery gains that people are making are often lost, and a sense of hopelessness sets in. And returning to Canada, I realized, like, this is not much different here. Where do people go who need support in the community? And I entered into working in supportive housing. The evolution of what supportive housing has changed over time, and obviously we're hearing a lot about that at this conference. We know that shelters and a lot of the good work that we're doing isn't necessarily leading to that protracted positive change that we want to see for people to reach stability and find home and find healing. And so what does it look like for us to lean in and to reinvent? And I think what I'm honored to be a part of with Sacagawea is, like, looking at these stats. In Hamilton, it's no different than anywhere else. I think it's 27% of people who are homeless identify as Indigenous. We heard on the stats from the ministry there the other day in another workshop, 30% across the country. So this is obviously a massive problem, but what do we do about it? And, as in my own sort of journey of understanding, the colonial history of Canada and where I fit into that, and the barriers that we have towards reconciliation. Somebody I was reading said we need reconciliation as much as reconciliation, and if it's just words and if it's just land acknowledgements, we do nothing about it, we're falling short, and personally that's a part of my commitment. Throughout the last decade or so, most of my experience has been working with an organization called Indwell, which is based in Hamilton, but it's sort of extended throughout Southern Ontario. We've been able to build about 1,000 apartments, supportive housing apartments across many different communities, and out of that experience, realizing, like, there's many transferable ideas, and then new ideas that we're learning from others, like Miranda's team. And so, a lot of what we are doing as Flourish now is translating ideas from one organization to another, contextualizing, learning from each other, and then trying to continuously take forward what's working, correct problems that we've seen in the past, and move ideas along. Miranda mentioned that their journey didn't just start a couple years ago or start this year. It goes back decades, and that commitment to always say, what can we do with what we have? And a couple shots there of some of the new buildings, the groundbreaking from the project that was opened last year. Some adaptive reuse, some new construction. Sacagawea's experience really is very broad and continues to expand in terms of scale and scope. And probably like many of the contexts you're familiar with, this is a headline from the Hamilton Spectator, John Perrant there, who was living outdoors for almost a year, maybe over a year. If I wake up cold, I know I'm alive. Encampment residents aren't here because they want to be. You hear that sort of rhetoric all the time. Oh, people just want to be outside. Well, nobody really wants to be outside, sleeping rough in the escarpment. This is just ridiculous. But what are the options? Housing's complicated. It's hard to build. We're not even barely allowed in most communities to build it ourselves. Tents are banned in a lot of parks. In Barrie, Ontario, one of the cities that is taking a hardline approach. They've declared an emergency so they can use all kinds of emergency powers to clear people out and crush everybody's belongings and load them into dumpsters. And this is obviously not an approach that's leading to results. And I admire Sacagawea's board's approach to say, well, look, if we're going to stand at the forefront of solving these problems, we obviously have to take a different approach. And Miranda talked about cultural healing and these other points that have to be integrated into the experience of not just building structures, but actually building homes. So the role that we have as Flourish is to help facilitate through all of the steps of the process of building new housing, finding money, finding land, cleaning up land, zoning, contractors, all of those things, because it is quite complicated, but there is some basics that go from one project to the next. What's very different in this project is this is 204 Gage in Hamilton. It was for 100 years owned by one family, and they kind of had it in the family for a long time. I think Sacagawea may only be actually like the fourth owner of this property since since the time of settlement, and so it's interesting to see it returning to Indigenous hands and ownership. But the site is on a great location in Hamilton. Bus access. There's a grocery store across the street. It's walkable to many things. It's about 10 blocks from the Friendship Center. It's a great location. But the idea of saying how can we create independent homes for individual people, so 40 studio apartments, as Miranda mentioned. How do we incorporate a lot of spaces for activities, for support staff, for cultural programming, etc., in a space that it's actually a fairly compact urban site. So there's a lot of constraints, but also a lot of opportunities with this property. Key things that obviously are very important: natural light, not feeling a sense of being enclosed, being able to meet tenants where they're at. Most tenants are coming with nothing, with very few belongings, having come out of other contexts where maybe if they were within an institution, they have nothing. And so how do you set up home quickly? So making sure that the apartments are furnished, making sure that they're readily available without significant cost to move in. And then making sure that on-site programs like food security, programs that include like on-site healthcare are available so that tenants don't have many barriers to finding the resources they need. Impossible to sort of see the details there, I know, but I thought if you wanted to print the slides, you can look at them closer. But looking at each floor is sort of a small neighborhood. So there's 10 apartments per floor. With office space for staff and the ability to sort of create a sense of community even within each story of the building. The whole ground floor and the whole top floor are community-based spaces. So for activities, for a community kitchen, for lounges and other kinds of space. And then you can see kind of a cross section there with the top floor is actually half an outdoor terrace. It's not just a space to go outside and get fresh air. It's actually a space for ceremony. And we worked very closely with, fire is important, but fires and buildings don't generally go together. But we have no space on the site for fire, for gathering, like at ground level. So we worked very closely with the fire department and the building department. And to their credit, no one ever said, no, you can't do this. They just said, we obviously have to work through a lot of technical realities of fire in buildings. And so how do we bring safety into the equation and acknowledge that there are cultural realities and imperatives that we want to have? And so we were able to work through a number of conversations, some research, drawing on the experience of others in different communities, to say, how can we create an opportunity for ceremonial fire on the roof of this building? And we're very happy to say that we arrived at a ceremonial firekeeper protocol. It's going to have specific instructions for how trained people will be able to lead fire, to coordinate, to host, and to be able to do that in a way that's safe for the structure, but not only just safe for the structure, actually sort of contributes to that environment of healing and contributes to the experience that tenants will have here. There are a few technical things like the way that the terrace is made out of like non-combustible materials, and some of the substrates and things like that were a little bit different than we'd tried in the past. But actually some of those approaches lead to improvements in how stormwater is managed and how we can actually control water quality returning back to the ground. So even within some of that, there's some positives that have come from that protocol. We did have to do a couple things like weather stations and wind monitoring and things like that to make sure that we're going to be safe. But again, to credit to the City of Hamilton departments for collaborating towards getting to yes. Miranda mentioned the cost of these projects. Innovation, doing something different is always a different financial model. It's a different everything. But in the end, in many respects, the resources that we need for projects like this are out there. Sometimes we have to create the vehicle or create the path for the resources to come together. The total project cost there, just took this straight off of our budget sheets, it's $22,950,000. Seems like quite a bit, but in the end of the day, it's actually a pretty good value for building permanent homes with the variety of spaces that are available. This includes the land, this includes all the fees, this includes environmental cleanup of the soil, it includes everything. Taxes, I think, are even in there. And then you can see in the very fine print, sorry for that, how this breaks out. The majority of the funds are coming from the federal government, CMHC, and they announced that last week. There's some funds from the City of Hamilton, from the provincial government through different programs. In the end, there's no one order of government or one organization that can fund any of this, and nobody's stepping up to do that on their own. But there does seem to be a willingness to cooperate between governments, between organizations, if the leadership is coming up from the local level. And credit to Miranda and her board for saying that vision, we can cast the vision and we can call people into cooperation with us to find those resources. In the end, well, not in the end, maybe at the beginning, there was conversation about what is missing from our community. Miranda was talking about the different kinds of housing they've done going back to 30, 40 years. What's missing is often the supports, rather than just affordability and rent and being able to offer an apartment with a financial reality of support. What other kinds of supports are needed, and whether it's these enhanced supports that really relate to health and overcoming homelessness and many of the traumas of institutionalization, that will be integrated into the program with Gage, or whether it's looking more at this other problem of learners coming to Hamilton, often ending up getting off the bus, suddenly realizing this is a completely different scenario than I thought. Homelessness, there's still plenty of racism in the student rental market, and people, quite often abandoning their studies because housing was the major barrier. So McMaster and Mohawk student offices were both trying to find a way to create housing contexts where students would feel comfortable, where they'd feel supported. And Sacagawea said, well, we can lean into that. There will be some new learnings. There will be some new ways of doing things that we have to figure out. But what can that look like? I happened to be walking past a site in our neighborhood, had a City of Hamilton for sale sign on it one day. I'd walked past this site for years. Said City of Hamilton for sale. I called Miranda's office and talked to Melanie there. And long story short, it was like, yeah, we're kind of interested in that. This would be a perfect location. It's like literally, 50 meters to a bus stop. It's 200 meters to a grocery store. It's excellent walkability to McMaster. You can take a bus or probably a 20-minute walk to Mohawk. It's a great location, and curiously has never been developed in the history of the City of Hamilton. Nothing's ever been built on this site. So Sacagawea will be the first to develop this property. It's just been kind of like a forgotten piece of land in the heart of the city. So that's going to become 15 apartments with 31 beds, as Miranda mentioned. It's going to look something like this. So 5 stories of housing, or 5 stories of housing. It's actually kind of on a lot that has like a major grade change. And so they'll have parking at the lower side, and then it's adjacent to a park. So there's a great opportunity for here if there are even students who have families, and being able to have a park right across the street. This project will, actually, I think we are getting comments back from the building permit this week, and then looking forward to starting construction in the new year, with the idea, obviously, to line up with the soonest academic year we can get to. So a couple of the key points that Miranda's and team sort of set out as like vision for this kind of innovation. How do we have multiple projects in mind at a time? Because we know that the need is overwhelming, and there is a certain kind of momentum that comes from one project and its success can lead to the next one, and we can take learnings forward. without sort of reinventing our own wheel. It also allows programs to take shape as they're guided by community needs. And so as those are expressed, how do we keep learning and listening and leaning into the next opportunity? Also, this idea of like phasing in investments, we don't get like, there are kind of surges of investment that come. Sometimes it's like, it's tied to elections, it's tied to all kinds of other things, but how do we be prepared and ready to take on investments and also to be able to expand teams? How do we bring new people into the organization, into the work that we're doing by adding these projects? Miranda was talking about the importance of collaboration, and we heard about that as well with the Friendship Center. And trying to say, okay, how do cooperation and collaboration can be messy sometimes, and sometimes it's just really darn annoying. But we really can't do any of these projects without each other. But how do we play to our strengths? And that's a key characteristic Sacagawea is sort of demonstrating. And also providing Indigenous leadership. I mean, there's lots of talk. We even heard the minister this morning talking about this, about reconciliation, about putting things into action. But really, in reality, our governments at all levels barely know what to do. They don't know how to lead, but they do know how to follow quite often. Sometimes you have to kind of pull them along. But if given the opportunity, we have lots of experience to say they actually can come to the table. It might be late. It might be smaller than we want, but we can find a way to bring them into community. And so by putting forward these projects that are truly actionable, it often gives them a way to invest in returning land. The city didn't give all of that land to Sacagawea, but they got the federal government to pay for it so that the city could put it up and offer it. And maybe there's ways to find land back without it having to cost the Indigenous community anything. As in both of these cases, it's not costing Sacagawea to put these projects up. And we all know that the status quo is not working. Homelessness isn't solving itself. So, Sacagawea's vision of staying at the forefront of leading that and finding ways to bridge, new solutions for health, for homelessness. Because in the end, these lists, every community has a list. Hamilton's like 6,200 people are on the waiting list. We can do advocacy, and Jean, to his credit, even while he's homeless, is constantly advocating for solutions for others. As a side note, since we put this presentation together, he has found housing, which is amazing. So, and then, yeah. And Miranda, your leadership in the community is definitely rising, and people are respecting that and finding your inspiration, leading in new ways to new ideas. And so, to your credit for that, and to your board as well, thank you. And we look forward to continuing this kind of innovation together. So hopefully there's something here for you to take away. And we're, of course, very happy to be a part of this community working towards solutions together.
Oh, wow. What a beautiful way to, and I think I needed to hear those messages today, It's such a practical way of reclaiming space, right? When we're in these policy talks and people use buzzwords, it's hard to feel connected, but, this is such a practical way. So thank you all for those presentations. We do have a half an hour left, and so I would invite folks that have reflections, comments, questions to come up to the mic and, pick the brain of these wonderful panelists. Is anyone feeling inspired? We're tired, right? Or we're relaxed, or we're hungry, waiting for lunch. Okay. You next, yeah. Great.
Hi, folks. Thanks very much. Justin Quigley, I'm from Winnipeg. Was really excited to see all the projects that you folks are doing. You had, Graham, mentioned or alluded to a little bit about that feast and famine situation that kind of comes up when you're trying to do housing development. And in Winnipeg, one of the things we are really struggling with, I think, is the one organization, one project problem, where they struggle really, really hard to get that one project off the ground, or maybe they get to two, but then they're spending a lot of their time trying to keep the lights on those projects. And I was just wondering if all three of you maybe could speak to how you found success in kind of keeping that ball rolling, keeping that pipeline going, and continuing to get those projects underway. Thank you very much.
That's a great question. Who would like to start? Mary Ellen?
I'll just give a quick bit of feedback because I think the projects that you two are doing are so exciting. For building capacity is a big thing in Niagara, being, us only having one Indigenous transitional housing project. Some projects have come through the region, such as housing. We have a housing first worker at our Friendship Center and a Niagara Assertive Street Outreach worker funded by the region that work for our center. So those are tools. So I think increasing housing services has been really important, and pulling or calling in our mainstream partners. We have relationships with the YWCA, with shelters like Birchway, VAW specific, that are housing people already, and we are building our housing services portfolio so that when those housing projects come, when the brick and mortar are there, then we have our services prepared. So starting there was kind of a strategy to build capacity, building relationships, and now a brick and mortar has come to our community, and we are using the knowledge that we have gained over the years, over 15 years, to house people in the brick and mortar. But until then, we're still housing people off-site and utilizing the Indigenous or the non-Indigenous partners that already have brick and mortars, advocating for Indigenous solutions, advocating for Indigenous ways of knowing, being, etc.
So I think for Sacagawea and our board, it's the fact that we know the need is there. So the need is there. We continue to do what we do. Collaboration with our partners at Flourish. So Indwell is kind of like the leadership in supportive housing. Well, for me, within the city of Hamilton. So piggybacking off them and what they've done, but then now Sacagawea will in return be doing that in that supportive lens, but with those wraparound cultural services.
I think you've raised a very important point. Momentum matters, and if we just stop and start, it takes a lot of energy to get going again. And I think that within my own experience, there was some opportunity to build that first project we did, going back into 2006 maybe, but then it was 4 years until we tried something again. And then we did another project and then realized this actually helps change us in terms of giving us confidence and giving us the ability to sort of move our imagination towards, if this is possible, what could we do next? And I think that took some relearning for my team and for our organization. And then, fast forward, through a number of positive projects where we felt more success, we could see more people getting housed. There's a positive feedback to seeing people making that transition from crisis to stability. And then on a practical level, how do we then start to sort of link to each other? Miranda mentioned sort of in the Hamilton context, there's about 8 different nonprofits that are all committed to actually developing. They operate housing, but also interested in developing. We all sat around tables and we were all nice to each other, but we really barely cooperated. And a few years back, we kind of decided to set aside some of our barriers and actually start collaborating and sharing information and working mainstream and Indigenous and just genuinely forging partnerships towards building more momentum, not competing against each other. And I think that was also sort of one of the key things that we decided to do locally, which is now leading to new innovations. I think, you said Winnipeg, right? Yeah, we'll see you there next year, I hear. But I think that practically there's so many opportunities in community. We have a lot of organizations doing good work, but it does take a decision at the board level and that the sort of management of the organization level to say, we will be tired by the end of that project, but let's not give up. And if we're able to sort of think about moving to the next project, a certain kind of persistence comes in, and we sort of build the muscles of housing development and of organizational development that then start to yield results.
Speaking of momentum, do you want to follow up with your question? Oh, okay. It got answered. Okay, in a natural way. Beautiful. Yeah.
Hello. I'm from Treaty 7. This question is for Graham. So I wanted to talk, you talked about adapted reuse. Tell me a little bit more of what you meant by that.
Is that, yeah. So what Graham was speaking about is that one of our projects is located in downtown Hamilton, and it's a refurbished old factory, so dating back from like the 1900s. So we converted that building into 15 units. So that has we have 6 2-bedrooms and then 4 accessible units. So that's what Graham was talking about, refurbishing, older properties. And then in that property, we also have like the community kitchen, and then, just making, having more cultural space for our tenants.
I think adaptive reuse means adapting and reusing our old buildings, what's already around us. And I think this is a very often overlooked opportunity. How many derelict buildings are in our communities? How many, with working with Indwell, we've converted 4 nightclubs into housing because the bar scene, the strip club scene, is not what it used to be. They sit there empty. They sit derelict. Old rooming houses. How do we turn those from derelict buildings into new housing? I think oftentimes, especially in urban centers, there's a lot of infrastructure that already exists, but we don't necessarily see it with new eyes, and I think that's a huge opportunity. Sometimes it's even like the heritage buildings, capital H heritage. They're protected for different reasons, but nobody really knows what to do with them because they don't have a new purpose. So sometimes those can become the ways. We were involved in converting a church in Kitchener that the congregation didn't need anymore, but it was in pretty good shape. So we were able to turn the auditorium into the community hall and then build 40 apartments around it. So I think there's ways that we can often approach building new housing and supportive housing that doesn't necessarily need us to start with an acre of green field on the edge of town. Yeah.
I really like hearing that, because where I come from, the little city, the big town of Lethbridge, Alberta, we do have so many abandoned buildings that could be used and purposed. There are a few things that have come up building-wise in regards to Lethbridge, and it's not Indigenous-led, but a lot of money went into this building when I could see that so many other buildings could be reused, and that money could have spread across the city in regards to housing. And so when you're talking like that gives me hope. But also in my mind, I'm thinking, how do I start, right? Because we need to move somewhere for our people in Lethbridge. And there is so many buildings and so many dwellings that we could use.
If I can build off of that, I haven't been to Lethbridge, but I have been to Saskatoon, I've been to Winnipeg. Everybody talks about, there's not enough land. There's so much land. Oh my gosh. It's just, and how much of it's sitting there doing nothing, right? Abandoned buildings. There was a fire, nothing did, oh my gosh. I think, Sacagawea's project with the factory conversion is a great example. Somebody had been trying to run like a little theater out of there. It was kind of cute, but it was basically become like a junk storage, and they didn't have zoning, and it just sort of sat there with nothing happening. Somebody bought it who actually had like goodwill and intention, and teamed up with Sacagawea to transfer the ownership in a friendly way to bring it into a new use, because they had a bit of a vision, but they didn't know how to move forward. And so I think that sometimes maybe finding an ally in your community who holds that land. Is there anybody who would be willing to cooperate with you, but they can't necessarily lead it. Don't look to everybody with land to lead something. Also be prepared for like the pushback. You'll get this, I get this all the time, even with lots of experience. Oh, that's not efficient. Oh, that's going to be a waste of money. Oh, that building's too far gone. If you have the eyes to see, you can often see something that other people can't, but it's somehow finding the path forward. I mean, there's just such a rhetoric in Canada, like, oh, it's cheaper to build new. In our experience, it's actually not cheaper to build new. It's often the same price or cheaper to convert these old buildings because they already have a decent foundation. The structure's already there. The zoning's in place. There's a lot of reasons an existing building may actually hold more value or even be cheaper than building a new one. But we definitely have we're disposed in Canada to say, throw it out, start again. And sometimes that ignores our history at our own cost.
Great question. Is anyone else feeling inspired to share?
Can I just add one thing to that?
Certainly, yes.
Actually, I think sometimes old buildings, you can make new friends that you didn't know you had by doing something with an old building. The heritage community, if anybody ever worked for the heritage committee, those folks are interesting. They're lovely people, but they often are so fixated on like the history of the cornices or the shape of the windows, but they don't know what to do and they rarely have any money. If you can step up and say, well, we still are interested in that building, but we want to turn it into a new use, you can make new friends and allies with a lot of the heritage types who often have some pull at City Hall by saying there's a new way forward for this building that we will lead. And I think, Sacagawea is a great example of that with the old Pearl Company building. They made, fake pearl jewelry is what they made there years ago. Well, nobody wanted to see that building torn down, but nobody knew what to do with it. And City Hall was willing to cooperate, and the heritage community was willing to cooperate in a new way because Sacagawea was putting forward an idea that was actually, that could actually be achieved.
That's great. And I have a couple questions. Are we still feeling okay to continue? Are you guys feeling okay? Yeah? But I think maybe you've already answered this, but so what's one systemic barrier you've encountered in your work, and how have you found creative or community-driven ways to address it? And anyone's welcome. It's just...
So one of the things I was trying to highlight in my presentation, I don't know, I'm not really great with slides, so, but I like visuals, was the Indigenous poverty stream. So with the poverty initiatives that are going on in the region, poverty is an issue, so we were able to bring that to community, ask them questions. In the end, we were able to create an proposal process that was more friendly for Indigenous communities and a specific Indigenous stream for poverty reduction.
Wonderful. Does anybody else want to speak to that? I think...
Bridging the funding. Yeah. That's, go ahead.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we collectively see is how to bridge the worlds of health and homelessness.
Oh, yeah.
We heard the minister talk about that there. He's like, well, if the feds put a lot of money into the province to, honor their responsibility jurisdictionally to deliver healthcare, then it goes into the black hole. How do we link the services that we need to be able to deliver to the people we're working with to truly turn the tide on homelessness on a personal level are controlled by the province? And so how do we tap those resources? And I think there's like an open field of innovation necessary for finding those paths. But I think that Miranda was talking about this the other day, like maybe there's a way that we can almost subvert that by working with Reaching Home and doing this, but calling it that. And maybe we have to sort of like forge some new trails.
So I think it's about thinking outside of the box, like Graham was saying, like for Reaching Home's specific funding can't be health. You have to, innovative way or name of how to use that, and also, using your community organizations. So, partnering with those other Indigenous organizations, like, Sacagawea is a housing sector, partnering with our friends at Dedo Adesne for that health stream. So yeah, just, building off the community organizations as well.
That's such an important piece of this work. Yeah.
Thank you all for your presentations. They're all great. I have a question for Mary Ellen about the outcomes of that housing policy research that you did with Brock. I was just curious if you could expand more on the reception to the outcomes of the research with your community, and if you've been successful in integrating the outcomes of the housing policy research into municipal policy or regional policy, and how you've kind of navigated those relationships.
Oh, I was afraid somebody was going to ask me that. I know I put a lot into my presentation with and that you could see was 2003, where we were in Brock University. So that policy is being edited and is being, with the help of the Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres as well, who have taken a look at it and made further edits. So it is ready and to be presented in all those areas that you explained. So that should be coming in. We're welcome to share.
Wonderful. Any other reflections? Are we okay for one more question, and then we'll go get some food? Does that sound good for folks? Okay. So for organizations or communities looking to support Indigenous-led housing solutions, what advice or key lessons would you share from your work? Does that make sense? Anyone feeling inspired?
I think Graham and our Sacagawea and Flourish's relationship shows that, it's not just, it's not Indigenous and it's not mainstream. It's having that collaboration, having that partnership. Indwell is one of Sacagawea's biggest allies. So, being able to share the same space and learning from each other, I'm really appreciative of the relationship and how we've grown. And as Graham was saying too, there is a coalition within Hamilton that is called Hamilton is Home, and again, that's where the 8 housing providers sit at that table, and we collaborate, we partner, we ask questions, we see where everybody is going and what everybody is doing. So yeah, having open dialogue with non-Indigenous and Indigenous partners.
And I would say there's lots of barriers to developing housing, but there are some unique opportunities you may have as an Indigenous-led organization that mainstream organizations don't. CMHC has certain funds, certain streams that have to go towards Indigenous housing, but if there's no proposals in front of them that are actionable, that meet the sort of the criteria of those programs, it makes it hard for them to actually put the money out the door. We've seen very good cooperation with the folks at CMHC, or it's going to become Build Canada Homes, whatever. We don't know the details yet, but my gut feeling is that they have funds that they need to deploy, that they need good partners in community to be able to help get the money out the door. We sort of often think it's just rural and northern. He talked about the 700 units in Yellowknife or wherever. But what about other communities? What about urban communities? What about smaller communities? And how do we put credible plans forward that they can then, go through their processes to get to yes, in ways like Sacagawea has demonstrated is possible, where literally all 3 levels of government are contributing, and it's very, very cost effective for those governments to invest in your programs if you put forward good program ideas.
Thank you. I think that's so important. There's so many jurisdictional issues and silos, and what I'm hearing from all of you are that you're breaking them down, right? It's about partnering in a good way and relationship building, and Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And so I do want to thank our wonderful panelist today. Yeah, that deserves an applause for sure.
I just wanted to also say, though,
Oh,
it's also about
yes.
raising the voice of our community members, of empowering them, encouraging them to have voice. That's really what kind of our research is about, too, is having them buy into the dreams and the visions of what we want in community. We're here and we're not leaving.
That's so beautiful. So I was going to have a little conclusion, but I love that. No, I want to keep it there. You know, community is the heart of everything we do, and I think that's such an important message. So I hope everyone here leaves inspired by the work you're all doing, and because these were, I found, very practical ideas and adaptable frameworks for creating change in our own communities. So I hope you carry that home with you. I wish you all a safe journey to your home fires, and if you want to, I'm going to be sticking around for a little bit if anyone is feeling inspired to speak off mic. Okay, thank you, everyone.